Welcome, welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. I'm excited to be here today as always, but I have a very special guest today that is going to help us understand something that's been on my mind. And that is the difference between being resilient and claiming that and being just dogged, keep my nose on the grindstone until it's bloody. And so how do you get those two to work together? We're going to talk about that today with my beautiful guest, Diane Allen, and her concept and idea of being in the flow. Diane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I cannot wait to get into this conversation.
Well, you have just finished and you published, a few months ago, a book entitled Flow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the tagline is "Unlock your genius, love what you do."
Yeah. I think that is such a beautiful thing because we do want to learn about resilience and being strong, but also if we are never in the flow, we never get to unlock just what you said, our genius.
Yeah.
So I want to talk first about you and your unlocking process, because my listeners who aren't looking at the video and are just listening on the audio, in the background of Diane, she has her violin and her instruments, and you're a master violinist.
And you're looking at a weird looking violin, right?
Well, it is a weird looking violin. And I noticed that on some of your things. I thought that violin doesn't look like most of it's not a Stradivarius. Definitely not a Stradivarius. So let's talk about this journey of yours and what that was like for you to learn about flow.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's just dive right in, Mary.
Okay.
So as a classically trained violinist, right, I did all the right things. I did all the steps, right? I went to college. I worked really hard. I took the auditions. It took a little while to get the job. I did get a job that I loved. It was the lead violinist of an orchestra. And so I'm holding up a picture of the orchestra I used to play in. And it's as if somebody was on top of the stage pointing a camera down. So you see like the top down view of the orchestra. And I was lead violinist, second in command to the conductor.
And can I just stop right there, just in case people don't know? I have an undergraduate in music. I love the symphony. And so if those of you who don't enjoy that in your life don't understand what that is to be first violinist in the first chair, I hope to shout, that is a big deal. and the conductor takes cues and she takes cues and they are back and forth in this symbiotic relationship. There are times when you watch a symphony that it's like there's no one else in the orchestra. It's just the two of them. Mm. And that's the position that you held. Wow.
Yes. And I'm so grateful for your perspective on that because you explained it in a way that I don't see it from the outside, right? But basically, I'm interpreting what the conductor is doing through my gestures and body language and energy to translate that to the orchestra players so that they understand what to do. Like what do you do with that thing that the conductor's doing? There's a lot of different things going on here. But with regards to flow, okay, I had to be at the top of my game. Otherwise it would have a ripple effect throughout the orchestra. And, think of dominoes. Like my domino goes down, so, right?
Yeah.
So I always had to be at the top of my game, but we're talking about music here, right? I'm supposed to get into the music to create an emotional transformative experience for the audience. People expect that because if people are just going through the motions, right? How many people are so exhausted that they're going through the motions of life? I didn't have a choice. I always had to. This is why I called my book Unlock Your Genius, Love What You Do, because my thought leadership lies at the intersection of intellect and heart, right? Because playing the violin is a very intellectual thing. It's very technical. I'm in this leadership role, but then you are expected to always be in your heart space.
Yes. And I think all of us have had that experience, whether you attend the symphony or you love a rock band. Okay. There is a difference between people who are playing music and a true musician that is in the flow. Those are the people up there on the stage that our eyes gravitate to. When you have a singer that's way, or a dancer that they are, you can just tell they're living it inside, and it's almost like the audience does not exist. You can tell they're in the flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the when a musician gets into the music, that's their version of getting into the flow state. We'll talk about exactly what the flow state is in a second, because there's a lot of science behind it. But in an athlete, right, it's going beyond what they thought they could. You know, they practice. They knew they had a certain level of excellence. Then they exceed that excellence. That's something that happens. And it's usually very powerful and self-actualization and meaning. And like, it's a very exciting experience. So the orchestra, right, it was a very linear process to get to that point, right? And I relied on getting into my flow state to lead the orchestra, leading myself first to get into flow, to lead others to get into theirs, because the energetics of flow is such that we have to just backtrack for a second. The electromagnetic field of the heart is 60% greater than the brain.
I'm going to take that stat and tuck it away in my brain, because I often have wondered what that stat is.
It's from the Heart Math Institute. They have a lot of research on the heart. Now, the heart, when you are in your heart space, there's 40,000 neurons in your heart. And when you are doing whatever it is, whether you're playing with your kids, whether you're helping an elderly person, right? Whether you're doing your job, right? And you're in your heart space, you're igniting the 40,000 neurons in your heart. Your energy, whether you know it or not, is now exuding 3 feet all around you. And everybody in that sphere around you is going to sense that. Then they sync up, they get into their flow state. Now they're exuding their energy 3 feet around them. This is how you initiate group flow. But for most of us who are women, right, and men, we have to lead ourselves first in order to lead others. And so that's why I say, when you can personally get into flow, you are energetically going to be leading others. It's that energy of enthusiasm. It's why I call flow the energy of influence.
That is like so powerfully said. You said what I said was in a nutshell. What you just said is my nutshell. I've been trying to explain to people when they say to me, because I'm a speaker just like you, and after a talk, they come up, they go, "Oh my gosh, I felt this, blah blah," and I had never felt that. That is what they feel.
Yeah,
that is exactly what they feel. They feel my energy inside of them, which ignites them, which just flows throughout the room, no matter what the size of the room.
And they're exuding their energy, but you instigated it, right? Yeah. You created the ripple effect. So that was my background, right? I got to this place. Okay, now here's the deal. Getting into flow became a routine. I took it for granted. Right? I just knew that I played my best. I felt my best, and that getting into flow was my answer to leading and to really, communicating with both the orchestra and the audience. So I had a lot of different roles in my work with the orchestra. And one of them was to take a small group of musicians to do cultural outreach concerts. So we're at an event. It's like a Saturday afternoon, 2:00, rural community hall. There's like
I love that.
Maybe 50 people there with jeans and t-shirts. And, it's totally casual. Like, Mary, there's nothing to be nervous about here.
Right.
Okay. Totally casual. And I'm running the show. Okay. And I get this ding, little light bulb moment. I'm like, I love public speaking. I've done a lot of public speaking. I've done a lot of violin playing. why don't I put the two together? Right? So
Like
without
light bulb. Yeah.
light bulb, without any preparation, right? I'm like being completely spontaneous. And I'm like, I got this. I walk out, I give a pre-concert lecture. It was awesome. Had the audience in the palm of my hand. It was great. Turned around, sit down, give a big cue for the music to start. It felt like my elbows were frozen. Like I could not move my arms. It was the freakiest thing.
Not a good thing for a violinist not to be able to move
Not
around.
a good thing. Now, I'm not leading the orchestra. There was a string quartet, which means I had 3 colleagues on stage with me. I'm playing the melody. They're playing the harmony. They're looking at me over the music stands. They cannot hear me. Like I saw these wide eyes, right? Which means the audience can't hear me either because I can't really move very far. And in this moment, I've had a lot of stage time experience. I knew that I had some sort of stress hormone response in my system that locked up my elbows. I also knew that mentally I had to be very neutral. Because if I started going like, oh no, or like, oh, I can't believe this is going on, or like whatever internal negative self-talk that could, easily be ignited by something like this, I knew that I had to be completely neutral, because if I had any negative self-talk, all that was going to do is perpetuate the stress response. So I'm like, okay, I get this mantra, just keep moving, keep moving. And it felt like an hour, but it was really probably a minute, for me to regain the full use of my arms. Okay, problem solved, right? Now I'm back to functional, right? But what really freaked me out was I could not get back into the music. I felt blank. Like, where is it? How do I get into it? What? Like interruptions. I basically had an interruption. Interruptions are the number one killer of flow. So that was the night I literally sat down on the couch and reverse engineered how I uniquely get into my flow state. And that has become my thought leadership. And that is now what I do is, I've had this whole transformational experience. That funny violin behind me is actually an electric violin. I don't play in the orchestra anymore.
I wondered if it was.
I don't play in the orchestra anymore. I do keynote speaking. I go out and I speak and I perform and I show people everything that we're going to be talking about today from the stage.
So when you do your motivational speaking, you actually play for the people.
Yep.
Wow.
I get them into flow.
I love that. And so they really get a firsthand experience of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Incredible. All right. So if you were to give that synopsis to someone who says so many of my women that listen to this show are, I have men too, and thank you, men. Okay, I appreciate you. But it is, for example, those women who are just going through the acts of life. That, okay, I have a career, I have my family, I have children, I have my husband, and I've got to get sharp and just stay focused to get through every single day. When we were younger, the best part of our lives was like to stay up late. Now, the best part of our life is when we can go to bed. And to go to sleep, because I'm like, gosh, I am just exhausted from this life that I'm living. And it is inside of us, Diane. We have a natural sense. It's that natural knowing that this thing we do of pounding the hammer again and again is not our natural state.
Yeah.
But the difference between really sensing it's not our state to being able to know what to do to be in that state.
Yes.
There's a gap here that sometimes is not bridged.
Let's close it.
Let's go.
An image came to mind even when we had our little pre-conversation of if everybody listening just takes their two hands, puts them together, and press your hands as hard as you can to each other, you're fighting yourself, right? But if you have give and take, you're pushing with one side and you're letting the other one push you, and you're going back and forth between the hands. You're you're able to move through it. And so I think resilience is not about having Teflon coating. It's about having that flexibility, right? To move through things and to have those tools. So let me give you the quick lowdown, all right?
Okay.
Of the science of flow state. Flow state.
We got our 411 coming. Pay attention.
Yeah. And don't worry, if you don't have the ability to take notes right now, we got you covered. We've got resources for you. So
we do.
Just relax and listen. So flow falls under the umbrella of positive psychology. Mm-hmm. Positive psychology was the flow state was coined by Martin Seligman. He basically noticed that when people are using their signature strengths and they're coming from a place of purpose, that they get into this state that we now call flow. So the psychologist who did the biggest amount of research into flow, his name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and his definition of flow is an optimal state of mind when you feel your best and you perform your best. And like I mentioned already, for me, it's like when your genius and your heart become one. And so there are a number of things that happen when we're in flow. So the neocortex of your brain amps up, dramatically increasing learning speed. The prefrontal cortex temporarily shuts down. The prefrontal cortex, that's where your inner critic and your fight or flight response kind of hangs out. So like that gets shut down, so you actually feel fearless and uninhibited. There's a set of peak performance hormones that are released: endorphins, anandamide, serotonin, norepinephrine, and missing one, dopamine. And these peak performance hormones, it's why we experience euphoria, motivation, peak performance, and happiness. So how do you know when you're in flow? Well, you lose all sense of time because you love what you're doing, right? You lose a sense of self.
I do lose sense of time when I'm there. I had never thought about that, but it's why, like, the talk was over an hour ago and I'm still there. I'm still talking, still greeting people because I lose sense of time.
Yeah. Yep. Losing a sense of time in a good way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a good way. Not mindless TV.
Right. Exactly. I actually just read yesterday that there's a term for that called negative flow state. I need to learn a little bit more about that. When you're scrolling or mindlessly watching TV. So for, especially when you're binge watching a series or something. So, but we digress. Okay. So that I already mentioned that, you losing a sense of self means that's what it feels like when you're fearless and uninhibited, right? Ideas and insights come in from out of the blue, right? It's kind of like a shower moment where all of a sudden you've got these ideas that just come in. Things come together with a sense of ease. Have you ever gotten more done in 30 minutes than you had in the last 3 days?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
And usually when I say that in an audience, you hear a chuckle, just ripple effect throughout the orchestra, throughout the audience. And it's like, yeah, we all experience that. But it's elusive. It's like, well, that's just a lucky moment. I had to figure out how to always ignite that as a violinist, right? So it's really can be something you can develop and learn how to ignite on purpose. So that's another key indicator. 2 more to go. There is a negative feedback loop is when you're pouring yourself into your work and there's no energy coming back. It becomes draining. You have to use willpower. You have to use discipline, and you're just getting lower and lower and lower and lower. Okay. But when you're in flow, you're in a positive feedback loop where the more you get into it, the more you get out of it. You progress through this series of different things where you're motivated. Then you're you've got ideation going on, and then you're generating your best work, and then you're experiencing joy, right? So you get into this positive feedback loop. And then the last key indicator of being in flow has to do with mental health. So for those of you who follow Adam Grant, he's an organizational psychologist. And in the middle of the pandemic, he kind of put his finger onto what people were feeling. And he described it as, the mental health spectrum halfway between depression and flourishing It's this midway point where you're fine, but you're not fine. You're functional, but you can't get yourself motivated.
Where so many people live.
Yeah, you're just kind of feeling blah. And, I experienced this when I was taking care of my mom. I took care of her for 8 years when she was at the end of her life. And I'm watching a close friend of mine going through this right now, where she literally is like, I am languishing, like I'm taking care of my parents, but yet I can't really get my own stuff happening. Anyways, according to Adam Grant, the antidote to go from languishing to flourishing is to get into your flow state.
Really? I love that. It's something that sounds so simple. Oh yeah, what you need to do is just get into your flow state. Oh, okay, thanks. I'll be back, in a month. Thanks. But it really can be a simpler thing than what sometimes people make it out to be.
Yeah.
The very first time I ever had anyone say to me, we're doing this very tactile kind of experience of flow. And they asked me to think of all the things that I had given to the world or was giving to the world or that I was good at or all those kinds of things. And just to put my right hand out and visualize all those things coming right out of me. And I was so able to do that. And I'm thinking, see, I told you I was in the flow and I'm just getting it all out here. And then they said, now put out your left hand to receive back everything that's coming to you.
Oh.
And my hand was stuck. It was frozen next to my body. And here I am pouring out everything that I think is my gift, my things and blah, blah. I could not get this hand to move. And I had to bring this hand back in. Do some really intentional breathing. And then I was able to move them out together and to see the flow coming from one hand to the other hand and replenishing me and nourishing me, and to be in that. For me, that was a first awareness of what flow was like, just to see the ebb and flow, this full cycle of what that was like.
Well, that's the thing, is that piece where culturally we're taught to give selflessly, right? But we all know that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Right? And when you're working in flow, it does refill your cup as you're doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about, what is it? It's positive psychology. We talked about, okay, what's the neuroscience of it? We talked about, okay, how do you know when you're in flow, right? You lose sense of time, sense of self, ideas and insights are coming in from out of the blue. Things come together with the sense of ease. You're in that positive feedback loop and you're experiencing more meaning, joy, and fulfillment, right? So let's figure out now what I call flow strategy. I think that everybody has their own unique way of getting into flow. And when I was sitting on the couch that night, the day that I couldn't get into the music, this is what I was doing. I was asking myself 3 questions. And so the 3 questions are where, what, and why. Seems simple, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into this. And so I think, Mary, I'll just walk you through it. What I want you to do is, if you're thinking about those key indicators, where are you when you get into the flow state the most? Where are you when you're losing sense of time and you just love I know you do this in so many different areas of your life, but just pick one that has the most vivid memory for you right now.
Okay.
And just locate, where were you? Were you in the kitchen? Were you on stage? Just give us a place.
I was on stage.
Okay. So the first question is pretty simple. Where were you? Right? Okay. So that's the first one. For my dad, it would be in the kitchen. Okay. All right. Now, what are you doing? Okay. This is right? Obviously you're presenting, right? Or speaking, or whatever you want to call it, right? That's what you're doing on the outside. But the what question has 2 parts. The real question is what are you doing on the inside? So I want to give you some examples, okay? So my dad, right, where he is in the kitchen. What is he doing? Cooking. What is he doing on the inside? Oh my goodness, so many different things. He's tinkering. He's experimenting. He's never used a recipe, right? He's one of those kind of cooks. I know that doesn't work as well when you're in the that's a good resource to have when things go wrong when you're in the catering industry.
Yes, yes.
But that's how he cooked every day, right? And he was, in a high level of creativity. So that's what he was doing on the inside. I'll give you another example. Some people, where they are is in their office. What are they doing? They're working on an Excel spreadsheet. What are they doing on the inside? They could be visualizing, problem solving. One woman told me she was collaborating. They could be strategizing, right? I think that it's whatever makes most sense to you. So where I am when I get into the flow state the most, it's on stage. What am I doing? I'm playing the violin and speaking. What am I doing on the inside? For me, I'm sharing the message and I'm sharing the experience. It feels just like when I read out loud to my son. It's that sharing, okay? So that's, my friends would say, well, Diane, what are you doing what are you doing on stage? Well, you're creating the music. But that, to me, is still what I'm doing on the outside. Like on the inside, I'm sharing. So does that give you enough examples to come up with your own?
Yes.
What are you doing on the inside?
Yes. I was immediately taken back to one of the, in my college career speaking, one of my first times, and just thinking how not in flow I was. I was doing all the physical things about speaking, but I couldn't move I wanted to walk. I wanted to talk and use my hands, but I was stuck to the podium because my notes were on the podium. And I had this thing like, okay, I can't walk away from those notes because then I will be lost and I won't be able to speak. And so I have to stay right here. And now I can't remember when that happened, but sometime when I just stopped taking notes up with me and just got up there and just talked. But that's a very visual thing for me. I can just see myself clasping that podium.
Yeah, being so stuck. That is such a visual thing. But then when you are without notes,
I'm so free.
What is it like? What's the experience for you?
It's freeing. It's
freeing.
Just you can walk and you can talk. And it's, Diane, I think it's trust. That's the word that came to me when I finally began to trust myself that I was very good at this and that the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions and the stories were going to come to me, to trust myself, to listen, and to trust myself to look out at the people. And I don't call them the audience anymore, the people, and really have them feed to me what they are needing and wanting and listening. And now I always trust myself because I know what that feels like. Yeah.
What I love, there's so much richness going on here. For you, that sense of trust is the gateway to being able to sense the audience, to find the right story in the right moment, right? It's interesting because there was this one woman, I was walking her through this experience of figuring out how she uniquely gets into flow. Where she was in the boardroom. What she was doing was leading meetings, but she made up her own word for what she's doing on the inside. She says, I'm scadging around. And scadging around for her was a play on the word a scavenger. It's like a scavenger hunt. And she said that she was known for pulling together unique resources. Like she had the same resources that a lot of other people have, but what she would do is put them together in unique ways. So she would call it scadging around, right? Now, you call it trust, right?
Yeah.
But it's still that idea of getting into that space where then all of your resources are available for you and you can pick and choose in the moment and be spontaneous, right?
Right.
Okay. So, well, what you're doing on the inside is sense of trust. Okay. We'll just kind of summarize it.
Yeah.
All right. Now we get to the why question. I mean, we have heard this question so many times in our lives, right? Why? When I'm talking about the why, it's not, I want to learn the violin so I can be a concertmaster. That's not my why, right?
It's not a bad why, but that's not your why.
I'm thinking about the highest, loftiest values that pull the best out in ourselves. We're talking about love and peace and joy and freedom, and maybe it's self-actualization or well-being, right? So where you are is on stage, what you're doing is speaking, what you're doing on the inside is you're in that sense of trust, but why? Why?
Why am I speaking or why am I trusting?
Yes.
The why for my speaking is because it's some of the times when I'm most alive. And I think, and I've really tried to backtrack that and just why is that so powerful for me as an individual? And it's because I'm at the top of my game, but I'm not at the top of my game saying, I hope you're all looking at me up here on the stage and that I'm fabulous. I'm at the top of my game and I want everyone to join me on stage and to see themselves at the top of their game.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, in Maslow's terms, it's self-actualization, right? It's not, it's exceeding your potential, really, because most people, think that they have a certain level of potential, but we can all go way farther than we think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then when we talk about like the energetics that we started with, like that leadership energetics, right? There you are modeling being at your best so that others can be at their best.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if you gave it one word, what would it be?
I think it's the same word. I now trust me. I trust who I am. Mm-hmm. And I want them to finally trust themselves, to believe in themselves, to see the vision for themselves of what I now see in me. I want them to see in them. I want them to trust.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like the what you're doing on the inside is like, okay, it's just basically a self-trust so that you can get to that access point. But then you're trusting on such a grander scale when you're coming from that place of purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay.
And I think it's why that I believe so much in vulnerability and standing naked on the stage. And that is that if people can see me as a real person, that's walked through real paths and real struggles, and they have to really let go of the thing. Well, fine for her, but not for me.
Yeah.
But when you stand there naked, they realize, oh, well, we're much the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what you do on the inside is your most compelling internal self-motivator, right? That's your secret sauce. That's what makes you tick. Okay. And why it's so meaningful is that as you're reaching for those, lofty values that pull the best out of ourselves, that's why it's so meaningful. And that's what I call identifying your flow strategy. How you uniquely get into flow is that sense of trust in those two different ways. You could say trust squared and trust to the third power, right? So when you define this for yourself, okay, you know it. And when you know it,
absolutely,
you can own it.
Yeah.
Right? And now that we've defined this for you, Mary, just in this one sense of, public speaking, what insights do you have? Oh, so that's what I'm doing? It's this sense of trust? Like, does that give you any insights?
It really does. I had never pinpointed that word before, that was the shift for me, that flow is congruent with trust. And when I'm out of flow, I'm not trusting myself or the universe or perhaps other people around me.
So let's say you're having an off day.
Yeah.
You know how to regroup yourself now.
Yeah. I can look at myself right in the mirror and say, okay, Mary, you're sensing like you're not trusting yourself.
Yeah.
Are you trustworthy?
Yeah.
Are you going to choose good things for you? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can step out of that, right? And go into flow. Yeah. Okay.
Let's say you get interrupted.
Yeah. Oh, interruption. I loved when you said that. That
Right?
interruptions were one of the was the number one thing to push us out of flow.
That's why I made a door hanger that says "Do not disturb. I'm in my flow." It looks like the kind of door
love
hanger
that.
you'd put on your hotel room.
Yeah.
And interruptions are the number one killer of flow. It's kind of the swag that I give away with my book.
I love that.
Yes. So interruptions, we all have interruptions, but when you understand how you uniquely get into flow, then you can overcome and get back on track way faster. Another example. So we talked about, so now, we're talking about practical application now of using your flow strategy, right? You're having an off day. You get interrupted. I had an experience where as a violinist, I never had to go networking.
Right.
But when I was looking into public speaking, I had to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I was like, in my 40s, new to the game of networking. It was so awkward. I went into this event. Everyone was standing in tight circles. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like middle school, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Clicks and, how do I break in? I was like, really? So I just kind of sidled up to a group. I didn't know what I was doing, but I started kind of eavesdropping. And then somebody said something, and I had a really good story that kind of pertained to the topic. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember this happened. And I just, to me, it felt like I was elbowing my way in. Nobody knew me. I had to just kind of, assert myself in a way, but it felt to me like that. But I'm sure to the people listening to me, it was normal. But so I shared the story. Well, you know what happened? I felt like myself. Then I noticed, when one person tells a story, somebody else has a story.
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah, yeah.
It was way more interesting than, hi, my name is this, and I do that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding you. Real story. I ran out of business cards at night. And so what I realized is I was sharing the message through sharing the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was, and when I was reading out loud to my son, it felt the exact same. When I perform music, I'm sharing the message. I'm sharing the experience. And my why, when I'm sharing the message and sharing the experience, is unity. That sense of unifying with people is so, that just brings me to tears. So connecting with people is unifying. And I had no idea that my flow strategy that I was using over and over and over again without even realizing it would help me to get out of my comfort zone and to be fine at it, right? To flourish.
Yeah. And get out of your own way.
Yep.
Because our brain, that thinking brain and the fear and flight brain are all telling you, you can't do this, or this is not the time and place, or whatever excuse it is. But that other part of the brain that is into flow says it's always now. It's always now. I love that. Diane, our time is up today, but there's so much more. Will you leave the door open that perhaps you might come back again?
Of course.
Oh, I'd love that. At the end of the podcast, of course, you can connect with her on her website. We have her social media sites there. Also, the link to Amazon so you can buy her book, because if there's a book for the new year, it's got to be, this is the year that I finally step into flow. And I'm done screwing up with myself and looking at that round hole and pounding my square peg into it. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could just see the universe as a bunch of square holes and I get to choose every day where I'm going to flow? We invite you to please stay connected with Diane, and thank you so much for being with us here, because we've learned another little piece about crafting a meaningful life. It's not about being dogged. It's about being in flow, and that will help you craft one of the best meaningful lives you've ever dreamed. Diane, thanks for being with us today, and we'll look forward to having you back another time.
Crafting a Meaningful Life.